Right, this is episode 22 of Monster. This is the discussion. If you want to see the reaction, click right here. Other than that, let's find something to talk about because we kind of talked about it already in the reaction portion. I was just thinking maybe we can find some interesting topics. Obviously, it's very interesting how the press is always involved in crime and especially murder cases, where it becomes kind of like a sensationalist thing. It's gotten so far that especially in modern history, we do record that serial killers are very focused on the press or on police, right? Their interaction with the police, but also mainly on the press, because it is a way for them to kind of get attention, a way to carry their art, right, or their actions out into the world, and also to make it almost, well, not completely, right, but to record it for history, right? So the most insane, crazy serial killers will be in the situation where they are in a lot of historic articles and in a lot of newspaper articles of that specific time period and whatnot. Although these days it's like more like the number of cases we get with globalization is kind of like an overstimulation almost. You hear bad news every couple of days. So interestingly enough, in this amalgamation of a media news cycle, cases like these are forgotten very quickly. So I would say like that the early serial killers are probably some of the most famous serial killers ever. These days, it's not that easy to get that recognition in a way, right? To get to the point where you are well known in 20 or 30 years, because there's just like 100 people like you, and it doesn't matter, right? The world is terrible, and in a couple of days something else will be happening. I don't know, Boeing's gonna fucking hire another contract killer or something. Holy fucking... You know what I mean, right? You know what I mean. There's a lot of shit happening in the world. And yeah, it's very interesting how this relationship between media and serial killers oftentimes pans out, because obviously the police is using that too, and we're gonna bait each other and put traps down and whatnot, and we're trying to play this game of cat and mouse. At the same time, serial killers want that recognition by the police, want that recognition and personal connection to the people, right? They're taking their cases out there, right? Their murders for everybody to see, and themselves on the big newspapers and TV channel programs and whatnot. In the same vein, we did have kind of made the realization that this is what they want, right? And that is kind of like a way to reinforce this behavior. So or at least a certain part of the media stopped showing the faces of those people, stopped even mentioning for example, the first names of these people, and were just describing what they did, kind of trying to put it down in a way as not to inspire copycats, but also not to give the people the attention they actually desperately want. So it's become very much a standard to kind of keep that on the down low. At the same time, the more notorious your crimes are, of course, and the more the newspaper's gonna try and pick up on that, the more investigation will obviously be done by sources even outside of the police. And if they and the police are in contact with one another, it's very difficult to, on the one hand, be like, hey, look at me, right? Pay attention to my murders, and at the same time not make a mistake that will be that will lead to you actually getting arrested. There's also a very interesting effect in the population, which is called like the Werther effect. I think I don't remember it one-to-one, but I think it's mainly revolves around the fact that, for example, when it comes to shootings or whatnot, or even like, for example, to transfer that onto something else, suicide or whatever, all of these things, if they are being publicized in the media in a certain framing, it makes it a lot more desirable or interesting for people who have already had ideas like that to copy them. Be that for recognition, be that as like a scream for help kind of deal, or be that as like a SBC kind of thing, unalive by cop, something like that, right? Or just, a lot of different ways, right? Making that available to people, right? That idea, not necessarily putting it in people's heads, but at the very least making people aware that other people have been doing it and how to do it and all of these things, right? Step-by-step instruction on how to build a bomb. What the hell, right? Things like this. And it makes it very more likely for copycats to happen. We see that a lot, especially if there's highly publicized cases of said shootings, of said suicides, of said murders, right? If there's highly publicized cases, these there can be sometimes seen an increase of these cases within the population of the people who are actually consuming that media or who live in those regions or whatever, right? Especially if it's globally being known. So there needs to be a lot of care put into how we actually report on these things and how we, right? You might be a journalist and you might be trying to go for max clickbait, and it might help your newspaper temporarily, but what does it help you if you displaying things in the most disturbing way possible and most gratifying way possible for these people is actually encouraging more people like that to do those deeds, right? Isn't that indirectly you being involved in these cases as well, right? Being maybe not guilty necessarily, but at the very least not keeping your hands clean. But Lunga is using this as a trap, and it's a very effective trap. I mean, he's very good at putting himself into the shoes of others, right? Him and Tenma went through the same steps as we've seen on the crime scene. They've been through this. This is how it went, right? Kind of working these things out. And they're both very good at drawing conclusions and logically going through different steps to see how stuff happened, right? Inferring that from the evidence available to us. At the same time, very interesting thing, by the way, that he mentioned. He's been her hearing was bad. Why didn't the neighbors or whatever recognize? Obviously, there is compensatory behavior. A lot of times you do not realize how much somebody's hearing or seeing or other things are impaired, because oftentimes this is, also this has an element of social shame, right? This has an element of the feeling of inadequacy when you are doing these things, and you're ending up having difficulties communicating that to other people and admitting that you are not capable of something that you used to be capable of, or that other people generally are capable of, or that you have difficulty seeing, difficulty hearing. And there's behaviors, right? Lip reading, a context clue reading, right? Looking at facial expressions and all of these things that are very effective if we train them well, and we do have apt motivation to train them well because we are afraid of being socially judged if our secret's out and people realize that we're not capable of these things anymore, that we have these deficits. We do develop incredible methods to actually get by in life, get the necessary information, respond properly. I'm kind of reminded of Sangatsu no Lion. Any of you who haven't seen it, go fucking see it. This is one of the best series out there. March comes in like a lion. Shaft Show, with that, it's already goated, but also a very, very amazing story. And I'm kind of reminded of short little spoilers for March Comes In Like a Lion, so yeah, to who has this case of like not being able to hear all that well due to various circumstances that we don't have to explain right here, but he does get by with doing interviews and doing all of that stuff because he knows the general questions that are being asked. He knows the general answers that he would have to those questions, right? Incredible feats done by humans just to hide their their inefficiencies or the stuff that they're not capable of anymore. Just to kind of protect your self-image, right? And protect that feeling of competency that you have. Yeah, must have sensed it some other way and responded, right? You do peripheral vision and all of these other things, right? When I go out of a house, I do assume automatically that the neighbor's gonna call me maybe, and then I look towards that and I'm like, all right, she's right, she's gesturing me, so she's calling me. I'm like, hey, how you doing? And if we're like in talking to one another, it's like, right? So much of human behavior is automatic. So much of human behavior is predictable in a way. And this is what Lung is also kind of banking on, right? The human behavior being predictable. And he has his running theory and he assumes that's what's right. And now we get into another way human minds work, right? Cognitive biases. What Lung is doing here is he's ignoring any evidence that is opposite of what he believes to be the true story, and he's already come to a conclusion, right? He's already like, this is a foregone conclusion for him. Tenma is guilty, and he's working his way backwards from that, and any evidence that he picks up that his perception picks up is biased in the way that he more likely picks up information that is supporting his beliefs rather than picking up information that is contradicting his beliefs. And even if things are contradicting his beliefs, he finds ways, logical ways, mind you, to actually twist that or change it or kind of look at it in a way that it still makes sense within his currently well, I would say hypothesis, but for him it's actually a drawn out theory because it's almost confirmed in his mind. He's so obsessed with Tenma that maybe at this point he doesn't even care if Tenma is the killer, right? He just cares about the fact that Tenma is a fucking clever as fuck boy, right? He's involved in these murder cases and he wants to get him to confess everything that he knows. And he believes that Tenma knows more than he already told, which he doesn't. I mean, a little bit maybe, right? Through his like following Johan and research and whatnot and all the things, the incidents he has been involved in. But beyond that, not a lot. And he isn't beyond, like it isn't beyond him to threaten people. It isn't beyond him to manipulate people, to bring people into positions that are disadvantageous for them. And he has no care. Like, holy shit, this shot from down up, right? He looks very menacing, very threatening, also very non-caring, very cruel. But yeah, these fucking shots. That face is like a menace. Somebody tape him up. Somebody tape him up. He's... yeah, and this is the face of terror, dude. It's like he's on to something. I do like this shot. Top down. Shadows looming right in the direction of Tenma, mind you. Tenma standing more in the dark. Lung is standing more in the light. And we're fleeing. I don't like these sequences. I do like when Lung is actually getting stabbed and we do see like him being like, now of all fucking times, you imbecile, leave me the fuck alone, right? Because he couldn't care any less about this dumb murderer and about this dumb idiot right here, right? He couldn't care less about him. All he wants is Tenma. And it's kind of sad. He's kind of ruining his entire life for this obsessive theory that he has. You could almost call it delusional at this point. Although this would be something that we would call non-bizarre delusions, right? Because like, obviously, if we talk about stuff like delusions or something, there's different categories generally, and like typically we kind of put it into like binary categories where we do have bizarre delusions and non-bizarre delusions, where bizarre delusions are mainly delusions that are happening in the context of like that would be absolutely outlandish for the culture you're in. But non-bizarre delusions, for example, are delusions that could theoretically be possible but are very unlikely, such as, for example, the theory of being being listened to by secret organizations such as like government agencies or whatever. Obviously, that's a possibility. Now, it's very unlikely because ultimately you yourself, most of us, are relatively unremarkable for those people. We haven't committed any crimes. We haven't done anything that should put us on the radar of people like that. So there shouldn't be anything, right? But these delusions come from a place of at least that's the theory, right? A lot of insecurity, bad experiences with people, bad assumptions about people, right? People want me harm, and also a negative self-image. All of this combined with different genetic factors, neurological issues, right? Vulnerabilities and dysfunctions in how our neurochemical cocktail up here works in terms of like schizophrenia or whatnot. But even, right, there's a lot of people who are subclinical, right? Subclinical meaning they don't match the criteria for clinical diagnosis, that are still having delusions, right? They're not as often as hallucinations, which is very interesting. Like a decent amount of people do have auditory hallucinations, even people who are not schizophrenic, right? And who are not suffering that much from them and not being hindered by them in life, right? There's been like religious leaders or whatnot that had that in the past, for which those, right, that was not a point of suffering, but more like something of pride and like them believing they have a mission and whatnot. But yeah, I'm kind of deviating from my train of thought. The thing is, like, we would call that kind of like a non-bizarre delusion, because obviously it is quite possible. It is quite possible that Dr. Tenma is the killer, right? It's not absolutely out of the question. At the same time, what we call delusional oftentimes is not too much different from what we call obsession, right? Because in both cases, we ignore clear evidence that something might be not the case, right? That evidence to the contrary, and we keep denying that, kind of just ignoring it or shoving it aside, or finding reasons why not to believe that specific evidence, and why to believe the evidence that we are, right, focusing on, that we are convinced of, and holding on to our belief system, right? A system in which in this case, Lunge believes that Tenma is guilty, Tenma is the killer, Tenma is this mentally ill person, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of deal. Yeah, he goes as far as to just not getting saved, and this is insane, right? This is heavy, right, delusional behavior in the sense of being a danger to yourself and to other people. Like, imagine this is a completely innocent person, right? I mean, Tenma is kind of not a completely innocent person, but mostly innocent person. But right, imagine this is like a person who's like I don't know, 16-year-old teenager, and you're about to shoot him, and he didn't do anything, right? Or you're gonna die in the process of following this person, right? Gonna kind of passively kill yourself in a way, just because you're so obsessed with the idea that this is the truth. I do wonder if he ever will realize that he is wrong, or if he will die believing that Tenma is the killer. Yeah. Monster episode 22. Holy shit. Holy shit. And next episode's gotta be pretty interesting too, with Eva being the center point of that. I know it's not as popular among the people, but I do like that too, right? These kinds of episodes where we focus on the side characters that have been established in the past, and I do really love that. That was Monster episode 22. I do hope you enjoyed it. Leave me a like and subscribe if you did. Check out all the socials, and I'll be seeing you next time.